Hello, everyone, to the first episode of Outside In. This is Chirag, and along with me, I have Sudhir, Gunjan, and Sameer. This is a podcast. Hopefully, it'll become a series, but the idea is for us to talk to Sameer, Sudhir, and Gunjan about. I've been hearing from them a bunch of interesting stories about people and organizations they've visited over the last few months. And I thought it'll be a great idea for all of us to just get to know more about it. So that's the idea. So, do you want to say hi and then let's get started?
Hello everyone, this is Sameer.
Hi everyone. There's no video.
Sudhir. All right, this is Gunjan. Happy New Year, everybody.
Yeah, Happy New Year.
Yes, Happy New Year. Happy New Year.
So, what should we start with first?
It's been an interesting 2016, right?
It has been amazing 2016. I think we have had, so let's start with an experience that, three out of this four have experienced it together. Let's talk about Vigyan Ashram visit that we did in Pune.
Do you want to talk about how it started, why we started doing that? That will actually connect you to the another person that you met, very interesting person that you met. You want to start the story from the very beginning.
Okay, let's do that. Let's try that. So me, Sudhir, and I think Sudhir should narrate this. We got a link or we got introduced via Prabir, and we were asked to see whether we would be interested in working with Kerala government, and
And a meeting with the CM.
And a meeting with the CM. That was the most exciting part. By the way, Nag was with us, so those of you who are listening, he has the deepest experience. He really put everything together for that visit. That visit demands its own podcast, so we'll probably limit our conversation for that visit in this one. So that's where the whole story started. When thinking about when Kerala government and Prabir started talking about, and the conversation was, can ThoughtWorks help them? Can ThoughtWorks help Kerala in any way? And that is
On the technology side.
On the technology side. And we talked about IoT.
I guess the ambition of what the Kerala government came in was, is there something they can do in the IT space which could hopefully create jobs, hopefully create a brand, I think, for Kerala. They've got a new government which got voted in last year. So that was the brief, something which we really hadn't done. And Prabir sort of got the idea at the last council meeting in October, where there was a session around what's happening in Shenzhen. And that sparked this whole conversation. Can we get a Shenzhen kind of ecosystem, something around IoT, something around hardware into India? So that was the real genesis. And that's when we really started reading up around what's the big bad world of IoT, what are the different components. And as part of the preparation for that, I think a lot of reading, a lot of YouTube video watching. One thing which we learned was something called Fab Labs, or the fabrication labs. And Fab Lab Zero, incidentally, I think Sumit, you knew that already, but Fab Zero, where the concept came from, was, surprise, right next door to Pune.
For that, what is a Fab Lab?
Yeah, so Fab Lab stands for Fabrication Labs itself. The overall idea is you have these labs where people can actually go and create stuff. And it's become very popular with what we call the maker community. So what they really teach is, it's a 6-month course which happens there, and they've got a lot of fancy machinery, 3D printers, other fabrication machines, which are all there. The idea really is for people to learn the basics and sort of be able to manufacture things on their own. And this idea really came in Fab Zero, or Fab Lab Zero as it's called, was sort of created in this place called Vigyan Ashram, which is, I always fail to pronounce that place.
About
Pabal. Yeah, in right next door to Pune, which I think Samir, you had seen or you had heard about.
I had heard about it, and actually I heard about it through an ex-thought worker, Chai, some of you would know, Chaitanya Nadkarni. He used to work for ThoughtWorks till about 3 years back, a long time thought worker then, has played multiple roles, and then left to really do some social work or work with the organizations which were focused on social change. worked with Rangde, and then he got introduced to something called Vigyan Ashram. And when I was talking to him about this fab lab or fabrication lab and telling him that, hey, we want to understand a little bit more, he said, hey, do you know where the whole concept started? It started about 45 kilometers from Pune in a place called Pabal, when a professor of MIT, his name is Neil Greshner, I might be getting last name slightly incorrectly, but Neil Greshner had come down to Delhi to talk about a lecture that he was doing in MIT in those days. This is about 10 years backstory. The lecture was how to build almost everything. And and it was the most popular course in MIT in those days. Kalburg, who already had created something called Vigyan Ashram near Pune, heard that lecture, and he thought, wow, this is interesting. I mean, can we, and will be very useful for, in the social scenario of India, in the rural scenario of India, if people could build things for their own needs using simple technology, that would be a worthwhile experiment, is what he thought. And when Kalburg talked to Neil, they both came down to Pune, and that's where the whole idea of fabrication lab started.
So you all visited Vigyan Ashram in December?
Yeah,
December.
3 weeks back. 3 weeks back.
And who else was with you? What did you see there?
So it was 6 of us. Sudhir, Samir, Chai, obviously, because he made the introductions. Myself, Aarti Pandey, and Sumit Moge. All 6 of us actually went and visited Vigyan Ashram. It was a very enriching experience actually going there. It is a very small place. It's around 5 acres, 6 acres of property. And what they do there, and it's been around for 33 years. I mean, it started some 33 years back when Dr. Kalwag, had this idea of making a learning by doing. The two principles that they follow is like basically you always learn by doing, and you don't learn one thing. You actually learn, doing multidisciplinary things, right? So you have to cut across. So those were the two principles that they started off with. They have this course called Diploma in Basic Rural Technology, which they prefer or they take in students which have either not made it from 8th, 9th, 10th onwards, college dropouts, 8th, 9th, 10th dropouts.
They have walkouts.
Yeah, exactly. And Dr. Kulkarni, who's managing the Vigyan Ashram today, he says that they are walkouts and not dropouts because that's what, they realize that the education system is not going to do any good for them. And so they walk out and actually learn something that will be beneficial for them.
In a way, a bunch of us are, I'm an
Walkouts.
engineering walkout. It took me a long time and getting a degree before I decided to do that.
Yeah.
But so they've done basic primary education is till 8th class, and their diploma course starts after that.
Yeah, and they have four things, right? So engineering and agriculture as something that they look after. So home sciences and how to build basic electrical circuits, etc. They teach that, and they teach agriculture in terms of how do you grow stuff, how do you manage animals, and that stuff as well. And at the same time, energy, so solar power, wind energy, and all those kind of things as well.
What was the most fascinating thing when we were there is so they teach how you make khichdi, and they teach 30 different subjects as you make khichdi. So right from how do you grow stuff, nutrition value, blah blah blah, and it's amazing. So that's the real life thing which happens. But I just found it amazing of how much they can teach, and their whole course is designed that way. They are trying to solve local problems, and I think some of the examples we saw there's a farmer whose hand got cut using one of the farming machinery, and they had actually created a prosthetic arm, which was sort of manufactured there using a 3D printer, and we actually saw the arm,
The mechanical arm
in action. Now they're tying up with Jaipur foot just to. So there's going to be a part which is very specific to the individual, and there's going to be the actual the mechanical stuff which is going to come in. So, but it's just absolutely amazing of what they have been able to achieve there in a very humble setting.
What are some real IoT type of gadgets or things that they made that you saw there? Can I Because
One of them was definitely the prosthetic arm itself, right?
so that had electronic components.
We didn't see
or-
that, but what they've done is that actually had 4 or 5 models. So they started with the mechanical arm, which was basically just doing up and down motions, right? And that was not good enough. So they actually found out what does it take to actually make a real prosthetic arm. So they found out the technology that is behind it. Then they found out what conference is happening in Bombay for that particular conference, what experts can come and help them with it, and then linking it all up, right? So currently what they're trying to do, the current model that they're working on, is to put sensors on the upper arm to be able to connect to the lower arm, the prosthetic arm that they're making, so that when the nerves in the upper arm are giving a signal, the hand can actually move in a way that the farmer can actually pick up things and do his daily chores in that way, right? So that's the real IoT project.
I mean,
that
there's
they're
the
doing as
other
such.
thing which Nag and Prabir have also been talking about. I don't know what they called it, a greenhouse equivalent, the agricultural stuff. So they had sensors in the ground and bios. I forgot the name, but
Yeah.
they're actually measuring the nutrients on the ground, how much water needs to go. So they had all of that sort of wired up. I actually saw that for the first time in terms of how it goes into the ground and the kind of sensors they have there. So that's another area which is sort of all connected. That was still experimental. I think that's something which they've
We
done.
saw a few experimental things. I mean, one was that agriculture stuff, measuring micronutrients in the soil and the temperature, and kind of simple sensors, how you can take inputs from them and try to create a system that really is better
Yeah.
for the plants. We also saw something very simple idea of basundi maker,
Yeah.
and Gunjan should talk about it probably.
Yeah.
But
This
you
was
want
we met a girl, Supriya. She was probably 18, 19 years of age as such, and she was a student in the diploma course that they have. And she was trying to do this experiment, that's saying that, okay, fine, what do you do using technology, right? So basic thing, they use solar cookers for most of the things that they want to make, right? Except chapatis, I think they make everything at the solar cooker. So if you want to make something sweet, but like a basundi, which is a little thicker than milk, she had made a vessel with a stirrer with an alarm on it, right? So basically the stirrer measures the thickness of the milk.
a solar cooker with a
So solar cooker
automatic
is
stirrer. Okay.
solar cooker is already there. So she
Okay.
made a vessel which had an automatic stirrer and a alarm,
I see.
which basically just keeps stirring because the milk will actually kind
Yeah.
of burn if you don't stir it.
Yeah.
And so
As a child, I remember how you have to constantly stir the basundi.
And
That used to be my task for family dinners at home.
yeah, exactly, right. So you know how
So now
painful
with
it is.
They have a smart basundi maker.
Yeah, now you have a smart basundi
I
maker.
am made redundant here.
Yeah.
you can get the job back.
So that was interesting as well, right? I mean, so they were using technology to solve problems that they have. It was not a big project or it's not a breakthrough, but I think it's very important to understand
taking-
technology and apply it in a context that these guys are in. And I think that was very outstanding to us.
Fantastic,
Yeah.
fantastic. I assume we can talk, about this for another 15-20 minutes. It seems to be very fascinating. But is it okay if we move to another topic?
sure.
Yeah.
And before we move forward, just want to introduce Sagar as well. He's joined us on this podcast.
Hi, Chirag.
Hey, so let's talk about somebody else then. I know we've a bunch of people from ThoughtWorks have been beginning to interact with Nandan Nilkani and Pramod. He was at the XConf in Bangalore as well. They've been working on the Aadhaar platform. What's the latest sort of interesting things that you're hearing from them?
Yeah, I think we got an introduction with Nandan through someone I knew in e-governments. We've actually worked with e-governments in the past, and I was supposed to meet Nandan at his office, which is this company called Step, right next to BDA complex. It so happened I got a chance to go to his house and the meeting happened there. Interesting big house. Leave that for a separate podcast. And he was quite fascinated by ThoughtWorks and privately held and what does Roy do and other things. So we spent some time talking about it. But
He knew about ThoughtWorks from the
he had heard about ThoughtWorks. He had heard because you do Agile, you got architects. And I just smiled on that. On our views, which wouldn't have matched. But I think the overall intent talking to him was I was struggling in terms of what should the topic be. Luckily, through another person, we are interacting with Venki in Mumbai, and we had actually spoken about a lot about India Stack, the UPI framework which was coming out, and other things. So the whole discussion really became around India Stack and how could ThoughtWorks really contribute on that. And so half of the discussion was really Nandan's thought process, and I had actually just bought his book before that, which Viral and Nandan have written just to understand what they are looking for. But just to summarize, I think the overall approach for India to move forward, they believe technology has a possible solution, and technology to sort of arm small and medium businesses in a way. And what the role of technologists or the government really should be is to sort of did what the US did maybe in the 60s and 70s, where a lot of technologies like GPS and other things were made widely available, and businesses really came across and came on that. And a bunch of these guys obviously were working on the Aadhaar rollout. I think all of them had some great learnings and a lot of frustration when they came out. And so they sort of decided, we'll do this. We've got this platform, we have the connects, and we have some thoughts and ideas. But can we do this on a volunteer basis? And that's how the whole iSPIRT thing really started off. And so Aadhaar and the 4 components of the platform, the cashless, presenceless, and all of this thing came out of that. And then they started thinking of how do you apply this? And they chose finance as the first place where they could apply this. Thoughts around education and health and skill building is actually going on. But like Nandan's view is very clear, if you actually build a strong technology platform which everyone can use, that will lower the cost of someone starting a business. So someone on a kirana shop should, for him enabling IT for payments should be almost free, and some startup around him will actually do that and they'll figure a way to make money. So that's been the genesis in terms of what can happen. And I was trying to figure out through ThoughtWorks style, is there a contract, is there something we can work? And Nandan was, it's all volunteer basis. If 10% of thought workers sort of come along in this journey, we'll change India. So he's really he mentions that in the book. You don't need thousands of people, you need 100, 200 people who are extremely passionate about this. He actually knew stuff around Damini, and so that was interesting. So he was quite curious on why we had done it and other things. I'd actually, because My Connect Monu, I'd send him a link, I think around Bamini, and I think a lot of those folks know about that. So I think there was good alignment in terms of what we could do. But it gave me a very different perspective on, if you see the software side of P3, I've just been impressed by the sheer audacity of a volunteer group of maybe 100 people being bold enough to try and change. The jury is still out whether it's going to work. I don't know, maybe it's a 10-20% chance it's going to work. But they've got a format, they've got a mechanism. I think they're tweaking that, they're taking feedback, and they are changing things, I think, quite rapidly. Last 6 months since we met them, so Nandan then connected us to a bunch of other people. E-governments, which is trying to build supply chain systems. So cities, we had worked with them earlier. They've got a new CEO, so we met him. This guy called Kiran, he runs a hospital. He is trying to drive stuff around health in India Stack. And then Sanjay Jain and Pramod, the guys, Sanjay Jain was the product manager for Aadhaar, Pramod being the chief architect for Aadhaar. And I think we've had some great interactions with Pramod. He's actually come and spoken in Converge, and we took him to a BIL meeting, and he was spectacular in that meeting. The interesting thing, I'll take another 30 seconds on this. So I met Nandan on midweek, and Monday, and we actually ended up talking about BIL. And Nandan was asking, okay, does BIL really want to make a change? And I was mentioning Hari, who's the CEO there, that he is dynamic and he can drive change. And we were really talking about a world where your Aadhaar card gets you right through and allows you to board on a plane. And Sunday morning, I get an email from Nandan, which, surprise, surprise, Hari from the airport was marked. It so happened those guys met at a dinner on Saturday night, and he said, "Oh, you're Hari, so you guys work with ThoughtWorks." And I met Hari later, and for the next 3 hours, they really spoke about this. And Nandan had actually written, "It's great you guys are working with ThoughtWorks, and they can help you achieve what you guys are trying."
And since the Bangalore airport has actually gone in, they've done that independent of us, but they've actually launched a prototype around how you get stuff on Aadhaar in. But the good thing is we are now plugged into this ecosystem. It's really up to us to leverage that. Even on Rangde, we're doing some work around the stack. Nandan has invested into another firm which is doing stuff in exactly the same space. And Ram knows Nandan. And when Ram had come, he actually mentioned, Ram is the CEO of Rangde. Chai is consulting with them right now. He mentioned the same thing, the whole thing around microfinance, how this can actually enable stuff.
And there are a few thought workers who are beginning to work with Pramod, is that right?
So this is a challenge for us, right? Because in the two things, the magnitude of problems they're addressing is quite wide. So I think we need to figure that out. And it's a whole volunteer basis. So I think the OTP group, people like Silva, Mujir, Anshuman, a lot of thoughts and ideas in terms of what can be done. So hopefully Pramod's time is at a premium. Available only on weekends. So I'm hoping the 14th or 15th he's going to come to office and spend some time around the health stuff. And then we can figure out what needs to be done, I think, around that.
But it's one of the great connect in many ways. I mean, in ThoughtWorks, we have always struggled in my mind to really look for whom do we put on the pedestal, who do we learn from, right? If you look at under the parallels you draw between this story that Sudhir was narrating, audacious mission or the ambitious mission, I will change the world, I will make the whole world better, I will leverage the technology, excellence in how you are building products around it. There are so many parallels, and they are probably doing it at a scale from an impact perspective, which is much larger, much bigger than what ThoughtWorks has probably tried. So it's probably a pretty interesting thing to track, get associated with, and learn from.
Correct. I think from audacity and just the size of impact perspective, Sameer, you want to talk about your meeting with Gopi?
Yes, I should actually. So I met Gopichand Katragadda, that's his full name. He's CTO and Chief Innovation Officer for Tata Group, Tata Sons. So I met him in one of the IMA conferences about maybe a year back, roughly. And last year, and since then we have connected 3-4 times over the course of a year. More recently, more frequently. One of the things that his charter is to drive innovation within all Tata Group companies, and I was asking him how does he work with the companies and how does he think about innovation in general, and his response was, I want to focus on innovations, and I want to fund and really go behind innovations which actually will give at minimum $100 million profits to Tata Group companies, and at minimum they should change and positively impact the lives of 100 million people.
And it's an and, is it?
And it's an and. And he was...
Sorry, I interrupted. No. So you're saying impact 100 million people.
Correct. And impact 100 million people positively. So he and hence, for example, and in the last meeting he was showing me an innovation that they have done. They created a safety device, and this is where a very simple safety device. It almost looks like a slightly bigger version of Fitbit that a lot of us wear and for tracking fitness, right? It's a safety device that actually measures similar to Fitbit. Instead of measuring your personal measurements, and they actually look at environment, and you wear it, and the workers who are working in manufacturing facilities, you can actually configure a lot many more parameters on it, and it actually gives almost mandates, and Tata Motors is trying to do it right now. Tata Steels has already implemented it. It mandates things like, in this environment, after 30 minutes, you have to take 7 minutes break. That break has to be outside of this enclosure, and those type of things.
So it measures what temperature and humidity and such things outside in the environment.
In the environment there. It also
very interesting.
Yeah, it measures a lot of things because some of these are very chemical heavy environments.
Right.
So the
quality of the air, is it?
Correct. Quality of the air. There are other sensors which actually measure those quality of the air and chemicals in the manufacturing process itself. So this Fitbit, in some sense,
Is interacting
with those sensors.
Nice, very good.
And he thinks that that this is almost an absolute necessity for all over the world. He comes from GE, so he knows that even this is not available in the GE environment, which is probably the largest industrial unit in the world. So they are now working with GE, Boeing, where they are trying to sell it. And the second example, and then I'll stop actually about Gopi. But second example, he said in the US, one of the reasons why farm productivity has increased is how you use water and pesticides. And the way these two are used, and there is a huge level of automation. The way they are used almost assumes very large land sizes. So, when you, for example, spread pesticides, they are actually spread indiscriminately. So they are spread using helicopters, essentially.
Small
and nowadays
airplanes,
it will be, but essentially drones and stuff like that. So he was saying, while that works in the US type of environment, we know that it will not work in India. Not only the individual land masses are small, two farmers who are next to each other will probably want to, take different yields and sow different seeds and stuff like that. So how do you really kind of create a small version? And he was saying delta innovations are not bad. This was just a small delta innovation on top of the drones which are already in US. And he modified that for India, and it's being piloted in.
Sorry, I didn't get that. So how would it work in India?
The drones would still go ahead and spread it, spread the pesticides. But and this is only about pesticides. There is a similar story on water, but let's limit it. But pesticides, he will still use drones, and he showed the drones, a video of the drones that Tata Sons has created. Those drones there is a small change both in the software and the type of the drone and the type of containers and which pesticides you carry in US simple things. And these are not and he was saying you don't need dramatically curve shifting ideas for everything. In US, when a drone flies, that drone in the farming scenario takes only one type of pesticide as a payload. So because that's all you need. It's 200 acres, and you just till that payload is over, he will just that drone will just spread the pesticides and come back. Here you needed drones which could carry multiple of them, could sense the farms, and different farms, and then actually they could spread this pesticide versus that pesticide. They will have to fly at a very lower altitude because you will want to spread, spray it on a smaller landmass, and those type of things. So pretty interesting. But the reason I got very energetic about talking to Gopi was all of his innovations, all of the things that he is talking are not about how do I sell next best gene for another, So I think he, thought process wise, psychology wise, he is very similar to ThoughtWorks. How do I make the world a better place? At the same time, I of course want to earn money and make Tata companies a leader in their respective
and impact,
areas.
right? If you look at the impact, that's quite high, right? They are not looking for impact similar to Nandan, right? They are trying to change the world and so on and so forth, right? So 100 million lives is a huge thing.
All right, so that's what I'm talking about. Outside in perspectives and getting to meet and know about what's going on in the rest of the world outside ThoughtWorks, meeting people like Gopi who are talking about these fantastic goals of impacting 100 million lives and making a lot of money as well. But that's a wrap for now.
Yeah, and we haven't even covered half of the interesting people that we started off discussing with the Sudhir, Sameer, and Sagar. And so please look out for the next episode in a month's time, where we will have interesting stories and maybe more from more than just Sudhir, Sameer, and Sagar.
Cool. And we're going to post this, of course, on My ThoughtWorks, and you will see an email. If you find stuff interesting in this, if you want to know more about it, absolutely feel free to bug Sameer, Sudhir, Sagar, Gunjan, or any of the participants in the podcast over email, over phone calls. Please do that. I think that's what they need to know, that this is interesting or not. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.